So welcome back to episode 40 of Taking Charge of My Cancer podcast. I have with us a great guest, Elizabeth Diehl, but everybody knows her as Leah Diehl. She is the director of Therapeutic Horticulture at Wilmot Botanical Gardens and a lecturer in environmental horticulture, both at the University of Florida. She is a licensed landscape architect, a master gardener, and a professionally registered horticultural therapist. She manages and teaches an undergraduate certificate program in horticultural therapy at UF, conducts research projects, and runs therapeutic horticulture programming for diverse populations, where she coordinates clients, volunteers, and students. She has given lectures, workshops, and training on horticultural therapy, healing gardens, and related topics to many groups in the US as abroad. She serves as a consultant to the National Park Board in Singapore, where she developed a therapeutic horticulture certificate training program. So amazingly, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really excited about our conversation today.
Absolutely. So you want to tell us a little bit about your mission, your business, like why did you land on this area?
Well, that's a great question. And I will tell you that this was not my career plan when I was in college. I sort of fell into it. As you mentioned, my background is in landscape architecture and actually before that, architecture. So I grew up with a little brother with a traumatic brain injury, so kind of learned the special education world. And as I got into college, I was trying to decide, what did I want to do? I was interested in special education. I was interested in design. And finally, they kind of started coming together for me when I learned more about landscape architecture. So when I finished graduate school, just got in touch with the facility where my little brother was living at the time and said, hey, I'd love to come start a community garden for the residents there. They were young adults with developmental and physical disabilities. And the director of the facility said, you know what, will you come work for us to do that? Because we can think of several residents here that we're having a hard time finding meaningful work for. And if you could start this program up and really focus on those residents, many of them had cerebral palsy or were using wheelchairs, that might be really great. So I had never heard the term horticultural therapy at that time, but I thought, gosh, that sounds like a neat idea and a really great opportunity. Plus, I get to see my little brother every day. So I did it. And it was during that time that I really started to learn about the fact there was a profession called horticultural therapy. And so that's kind of where I got started.
That's great that your brother likes it. He is still involved with it.
He sure is. And I haven't been in that position since, oh my goodness, probably the early 2000s, because I moved on to a teaching position. But the greenhouse is still there. The program is still running, and he still goes there every day.
That's awesome. That's so great.
Yeah.
The next question was if you were always planning in doing this. I guess you didn't. But now that you're doing this, do you miss at all going back into just being an architect, or how do you kind of like play that?
Yeah, so I continued to do landscape architectural design for a while. I was very interested in healing gardens, and not just the creation of them, but the research of them, and really trying to understand what is it about a space, a garden space, that can affect positive change in us. And so I've continued to be involved in that. I don't do design work anymore, and I do miss the creativity that comes with creating designs that people are going to move into. But I'm also finding that I'm kind of filling that creative need, or however you might say that, through creating programming and different experiences for people in our therapeutic horticulture program. So I'm definitely still getting that outlet.
Got you. So for our audience out there, the listeners, tell us what is horticultural, therapy. I mean,
what it is.
I link it with like plants.
Yes, absolutely. So, and I'm going to explain two things. There's something called horticultural therapy, and there's something called therapeutic horticulture. And although they have a lot of overlap, they are two different things. So horticultural therapy is the use of plants, plant-related activities to put very simply, increase quality of life. And in a horticultural therapy program, you're doing that by working with individuals, creating an individualized treatment plan, and then coming up with horticulture-related activities that help those individuals work on goals to increase their quality of life. So it could be, for example, at this first program I mentioned where my little brother lived, we had folks that were learning about some of the more physical function, or they were trying to improve their physical function, eye-hand coordination, gross fine motor skills. So we would develop horticulture activities that allowed them to work on those skills.
Okay.
We also had, I remember a young man that had some behavioral issues, and he would get very upset if somebody asked him to do something. And so we used activities in the greenhouse in the horticulture setting to help him do better at that, to start coming up with some coping mechanisms for that anger or things like that. So basically you're figuring out what does an individual need to improve their life, and how can we come up with some horticulture activities for them to do that. So that you're creating individualized goals and you're documenting them, just like you might in physical therapy or occupational therapy. In a therapeutic horticulture program, which is what we do mostly here at UF, that's when you're looking at a group all together and you've got goals for the entire group. So as an example, we're working with a group of people with Parkinson's disease right now and their care partners. And so our big goals are stress relief. They're continuing to work on some of the physical function, kind of maintaining that eye-hand coordination, movement through the greenhouse. So our horticulture activities are going to emphasize those opportunities.
Okay. And I understand that you have different groups, right? So you're being, kind of like targeting Parkinson's, you've been targeting, some kind of like, spinal cord injury, and then cancer patients. So you want to tell us a little bit about the cancer patient group?
Yeah, we've had a couple of different cancer groups in the past. And I will put a plug out there for the Climb for Cancer Foundation, who's been so supportive of our program and really helped us with funding to be able to have those programs. The current one that we have now, or that I should say that we're recruiting for, is women with gynecologic cancer. We actually have a research program going on to see if participation in therapeutic horticulture can provide some positive benefits and improve quality of life. So in that program, we're doing all sorts of horticulture activities, but we're also talking about different types of wellness strategies. It could be mindfulness, or it could be an anxiety reduction skill, or meditation, or, all different kinds of things. It's sensory stimulation. And so our hope is that not only are we helping women to feel more confident about taking care of plants, because we're teaching them the skills about how to do that, but we're also helping them to learn the role that plants and nature can play in their personal wellness. Okay. And then we're pairing that with some kind of a wellness strategy. Hopefully over the course of the semester, we've taught a bunch of them, and they can find 3 or 4 in there that really work for them.
That's amazing. It's so great. Like, we get involved in our world from healthcare, right? And then you completely forget what it is to feel like. And I always tell my patients, when they come here, we met each other, like 10 years ago or something like that.
Yeah.
And then after I hear you in a webinar not long ago, and I'm like, oh my God, I've been forgetting to tell patients about the garden. Like we used to tell them, when radiation is just, taking their time, or a machine is down, or it's a lot of time between appointments, don't stay here, just go walk to the garden. It's beautiful. Give you exercise. We actually give them some exercise to do on each of the benches up there, and do positive that, and all those kind of things that are really nature. Is just kind of one of the greatest things for you to do all this stress relief, like, in the middle of maybe feeling really bad. It's nice to see nature and see how beautiful it is, right? So
yep. I think that's right. And we do know from research that exposure to nature can reduce blood pressure, can reduce cortisol levels and stress, can reduce heart rate, all sorts of really good things. And, as you're talking about our location next to these medical centers and research facilities, there's a lot of stressful things going on in those buildings. So having the opportunity to walk outside and get some breath, get some fresh air, really is not just good for us mentally, but it's good for us physiologically as well, which then hopefully can help better healing in the long run. Yeah. So, I always say to people, it's kind of like if your doctor's prescribed you a particular medication, you're not going to get the benefit of that if you don't take it. And it's the same with nature. If you don't go out into nature, it's much harder to get the benefit from that. But with that being said, we also know that you don't have to have this big, beautiful garden to benefit from nature. You can have a windowsill garden of plants that you love that you're taking care of, 3 or 4 pots. There's so many different micro opportunities to really connect with plants and nature.
Okay. Will you give us 3 valuable tips that you learn about your journey? I'm sure it's more than 3. It can be so many.
That's right. Well, one thing that I learned pretty early on is that I do not know it all. And I have learned so much from so many different people that I've met through running programs like this. They may come in thinking I'm the horticulture expert, but I learned not just horticulture information from people, because so many people have grown up with different kinds of gardens. They've learned this from their grandmother and that from their grandfather, but also just attitudes about how to approach the world. We're often working with folks that are, they're really sick, or they're really disadvantaged for one reason or another, but yet they still have these amazing attitudes and optimism and love. And it's just, it's so wonderful to see that. It just makes you feel hopeful about people. So those would be 2 things. And I think maybe the third, and I don't know if this is a tip, more it's a lesson that I've learned, that horticulture, plants, gardens, nature have a way to bring people together that is so difficult in other ways. An example is here in our program, we have a couple of groups where I know that the people that are attending those groups have very different political affiliations, very different racial backgrounds, attitudes about things, and none of that matters when they're in the greenhouse working together on plants. They're there together, they're talking, they're enjoying each other, because they're all doing something that's meaningful and valuable, and that's what comes first. So that's been a really, really wonderful thing for me to see.
That's very valuable. How about your most painful lesson that you have learned through your journey?
Oh, goodness. What I would have to say is that, people don't live forever. I mean, of course, that's obvious, but we have had, because we've worked with some groups of people that are very ill, that we've lost some participants, who have passed away during our course, our session. I mean, not during the session, but, during the time we're working with them, or shortly after. And that's sort of devastating, to think that you've gotten to know somebody in such a special way. I know that you have that, experience probably way more than I do. But it's painful, but at least we know that we've had hopefully some kind of a positive effect on their lives.
Yeah, that's completely true. And you just mentioned something before that, when you were saying that even though these patients go through so much, even if it's just from a little skin cancer that is really straightforward, easy to treat, to, a stage 4 breast cancer with multiple metastases everywhere, it's just amazing how much I think just really cancer changed your way to see life. So it's like every day is important. Every day you want to take advantage of. Every day you enjoy everything. The smallest stuff doesn't matter anymore. You see life completely different. So where you learn from these patients every day, even though, yes, we have been through the painfulness of losing some of them, but we know that they were having their best spirit until that moment, right? And like we were able to improve their quality life until that last moment, so has been really very grateful and fulfillment for me, just what I learn from patients every day. So just every time that I listen and work with them, I just really go back into maybe my personal life. And sometimes it's like, I really don't have nothing to complain about.
Yes.
What other people goes through.
Yeah.
I really have it easy. If I compare with some other situations that other patients go through day in and day out.
We had a couple of semesters ago, we had a group for people with cancer. It happened to be all women. And what was so amazing, it was 3 sets of mothers and daughters. And in each case, it was the mother that had cancer, and the daughters were, serving as their care partners. And they all would come and they'd work in the therapeutic horticulture program together. And it was such a joy to see those relationships, some of which were very well established, some of which were kind of developing through this new experience they had together. And the other thing that was so neat about it, I lost my mother when I was in college, so I haven't had that opportunity. I sort of felt like I was living vicariously a little bit through them. And they, of course, were, so warm and wonderful to me. But I also saw this amazing relationship between the six of them in terms of supporting each other. And, they were at different stages of their cancer. So giving each other encouragement, oh, yes, this part is terrible, but you're going to get through it. And then this will happen. And it was just such an amazing thing to be part of. I was sort of an outsider in that sense, but I was still able to be witness, to that environment. And it was really amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. So if I go back a little bit into like plants, right? So I hear a lot about, medicine and plants, and different type of plants give you certain different type of either help with peace or help with spirit or help. You want to tell us a little bit more in depth, like, if you go, like, again, my husband has a green thumb. He loves plants. I'm like, everything looks great, but
Yeah.
I can't really do anything with them besides looking at them and see the wonderful job that he does. But so how, like, you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I can't speak a whole lot to plants as medicine from the physical standpoint. There's a whole plant medicine type discipline out there, and I don't have that specialty. But I do know some about some plants, lavender, for example. Many of us know that it's can serve kind of as an antidepressant and an antiseptic and all sorts of wonderful things. What I can talk a little bit more about is that we know that certain fragrances have very strong positive impact on people. Lavender can be one of those. That doesn't mean that it works for everybody, but because our sense of smell is one of our oldest senses, one of the most primitive senses, it is directly connected to the limbic system in our brain. And so that sense of smell can really open up a lot of memories and a lot of emotions. Sometimes they can be a little painful at times too. Maybe a smell brings back a memory of a lost family member or a wedding day or, something. It can go in both directions, but the ability for fragrance of plants to stimulate us in such a strong way can actually be very positive. So that I often look when I'm thinking about what plants to work with in a therapeutic horticulture program, I'm thinking about their sensory qualities. Fragrance would certainly be one. What can that fragrance do for us? Now, some people that are going through cancer treatment, that sense of smell may be very sensitive, and we need to be aware of that and make sure that we're not flooding them with a scent that's making them nauseous. So we do know we need to be real careful about something like that. But there's also touch, some beautiful, soft, fuzzy, or maybe more spiky, or just different kinds of textures of leaves. There's wonderful bright colors. And of course, plants can be edible as well. So I'm thinking about those four senses. And if I can get a plant that has more than one of those, like Cuban oregano is one of my favorites because it smells good, it tastes good, it feels good, it looks good.
Good to know. Good to know.
So there are some. And then, of course, I'm also thinking about what plants are kind of easy to learn to grow, because I want our participants to be successful and to continue to be motivated by growing those plants. So we'll often start out with easy stuff. And then, we can add in some more complicated stuff if people want to learn some new techniques.
Okay, great. Is there anything that you have that will be a value for our audience that we have not talked about yet?
Well, I guess I'm thinking of a couple of things. And one is that I think that one of the amazing aspects of nature and our relationship to nature is that it kind of helps us to realize that while we're important and we're important to the people that love us and that sort of thing, we're pretty little in this whole big, gigantic world under Mother Earth. And I think that can actually be comforting because it helps us realize that we don't have to bear the responsibility of the whole world. I mean, of course, we have to bear some responsibility, but just the fact that nature is so powerful, is so all-encompassing, and I think kind of realizing that we're part of that can be helpful in some ways. I also think that working with plants, there's a lot of opportunity for creativity and self-expression. And we found with some of our folks that are affected by cancer that can be a really wonderful outlet for kind of working through some of the things that they're working through and being able to work with something living and growing, but also in a very creative way. So I guess my tip is don't be afraid to go out and just experiment with things in the garden. If it doesn't make it, it doesn't make it. There's lots more plants, you know,
Yeah,
and
me. It doesn't make
yeah.
it me off.
But learning that lesson and learning about the processes of the natural world, and that can really be very enriching, I think, and help us to get out of our own heads when we need to do that.
That's a very good tip. That encouraged me not to always can get my tomatoes die.
Yeah.
How can people find you? And I will put the description in the description of the podcast, like where they can find you, but where
Okay.
can they find you?
Yeah, so if you just Google Wilmot Gardens at University of Florida, our website will pop up, and I'm in there under staff somewhere. There's also information about our therapeutic horticulture program. You can also find me on the Environmental Horticulture Department webpage. So I'm pretty easy to find. Or you can just walk over to the greenhouse and we're open to the public, as are the gardens. So we'd love to have people visit as well.
What are your open hours?
Oh, that's a good question. It's Monday through Friday usually. There's not too many of us that work in the greenhouse. So if I have an appointment somewhere, it might be closed, but it's usually open at least a good part of the day, Mondays through Fridays.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, the greenhouse. The gardens, of course, are open all the time.
Okay, you mentioned something about Singapore, that
Yes.
you were like a consultant for the National Parks Board in Singapore. You want to tell us a little bit about that experience?
Oh, I'd love to. And actually, I am leaving for Singapore Saturday
Oh,
to go
wow.
back. But yeah, I've been working with them, I think since 2017. They asked me to come over and serve as a consultant, sort of a fellow for the National Parks Board, because they were very interested in introducing the concept of therapeutic horticulture to the country. They have, Singapore is the most beautiful place. It's incredibly clean. It's incredibly green for such a dense city, but they were recognizing the fact that a lot of their older adults were very isolated. They have these high-rise buildings, and so they were, trying to find ways to get the older adults out of their apartments, down outside, interacting with each other, exercising. And they recognized that a horticulture program would do that. So I helped consult with them on programming and also the creation of therapeutic gardens. So they actually now have, I believe it's 13 therapeutic gardens throughout the country, and they're going to build up to 30, I think, by 2030, where there are raised beds and there's exercise equipment, there's programming, there's shelter, there's water features. They're just amazing.
Oh,
And
wow.
so, yeah, so if anybody ever has a chance to go there, or you can just Google that too, there's some really neat stuff. So I work on that. And I also teach a therapeutic horticulture kind of certificate program over there as well.
That's amazing. I mean, I have not been in Singapore, but I have seen some really beautiful things out there. So I'm sure that they really go on top of like really putting something together. So
Yeah.
that's super exciting. Have you been, I mean, it's completely different culture. Have you been able to bring back to the States, some of that kind of like culture ideas?
Well, that's a great question. Of course, I'm not allowed to bring any plants back.
Yes.
And I won't, I will say that I do my best to honor that. But, this semester, actually, here at the greenhouse, I've had several students from Singapore take our certificate program. And this semester, I have a gentleman from Singapore who's doing his internship with us. There's a woman that's also from Taiwan doing her internship with us. And it's been so wonderful because they can share so many of their cultural components of plants, and we've been making teas that they're familiar with. So a lot of kind of recipes, but also understanding the use of herbs and cooking over there, the health, that so many of the Asian countries have, it seems like, a much better grasp on the medicinal qualities of tea and how to use herbs that way. So we've been able to share some of that information. It's been really neat. Our participants are really enjoying it.
That's great. And again, it's just, how this just start for something little and look how big it's getting. So super excited for you. That's excellent. Well, is anything else you would like to tell me before I let you go?
Oh, goodness. Well, you know what? I would like to tell you about one more thing, because we're so excited about this. It's about therapeutic horticulture. We had a research project going on for University of Florida students with stress, anxiety, depression, loneliness. And we took pre and post measures on those that participated in our therapeutic horticulture program. And I'm saying this because I actually think it could be really helpful for people struggling with cancer as well. We found that those students that participated in 8 therapeutic horticulture sessions had statistically significant decreases in stress and anxiety, and statistically significant increases in general resilience and academic resilience.
Oh, wow.
So that was really some amazing findings. We're working on publishing that paper right now, but as a result of that, the university has given us a good amount of funding so that we can expand that program for students. Because, as many of us know, college students in the United States really are struggling with a lot of mental health issues.
Mm.
But what's exciting to me about that project is that's some pretty straightforward mental health issues that they're struggling with, that many of us, whether we're a college student or not, are struggling with. And so we know that working with plants and nature can help that. So I just would really urge anybody, if they've never tried it before, just take a walk through the park. Put your phone in your pocket, listen to the natural sounds, look at the natural sights, and see what you discover.
That was one of the best things. It's something that I tend to do myself because I'm here indoors all day long. So I don't see the sun. I come at 7, leave for 4:35. And so I really want to be outdoors when I'm a step out of here. And then I just can get home, go for a walk, and, kind of spend time with my family. But it is just really such a, like, no matter how you feel when you go home, it's like just being out on nature. You just feel better. Like, even if you just do that for like 10 minutes or 20 minutes, it's just being out there and enjoying nature. And, we're lucky that we are in this beautiful weather in Florida.
We
so
are.
we have to be dealing with being like, Washington, like most of the time in winter or something like that, right? So which can be a little bit more depressing. So sometimes we just get too busy in our life that we don't take advantage of what, nature is right out there. Doesn't cost us anything.
That's right.
It's just
one of the
right
cheapest treatments out there.
Exactly. It's just right out there, and we don't take advantage because we're just so busy with day-to-day activities. So that was wonderful. Thank you so much. It has been great information. Just kind of really brought me back to just really encourage more and more our patients to really go visit you and get involved, with horticulture, and doesn't matter where they are, to just really try to enjoy more programs like yours, wherever they live. So
yes. Well, thank you so much. This has been really wonderful.
Thank you so much, and have a great trip. I want to know all about it.
Okay.
Have a good evening.